Welcome to this episode of our program Arab Affairs. Usually we're tackling part of the developments that were taking place, or just one development that has been taking place during the week. Today we'll be dealing with two important developments. Each time we'll be speaking about two important developments in the Arab world. We'll be always catching up to the developments that are occurring in the Arab world, where we are seeing lots and lots of developments all the time. During the past week, two important developments in two important countries took place. We'll be speaking about that in our episode today. Before we delve into our discussion, first let's have a quick look on the Arab news that took place during this week. We'll come back for more discussion.
President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi held phone talks with Mohammed al-Menfi, the new head of the Libyan Presidency Council, and Abdelhamid al-Dibeiba, the designate Libyan Prime Minister. The head of state congratulated al-Menfi and al-Dibeiba on the Libyan Parliament's approval of forming the new executive authority and the new unified government, stressing that they should move on to realize political settlement and create a good atmosphere for Libyan dialogue. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi received Kuwaiti Foreign Minister Sheikh Ahmed al-Nasser al-Mohammed al-Sabah. The meeting tackled means of boosting bilateral relations in various fields. During the encounter, the Kuwaiti Foreign Minister conveyed a message from the Kuwaiti Emir Sheikh Nawaf al-Ahmed al-Jaber al-Sabah, highlighting the Kuwaiti government and people's appreciation to the strong historic ties bonding both countries. Sheikh Ahmed Nasser al-Mohammed al-Sabah hailed Egypt's role as the cornerstone of the Arab nations' security and stability. Upon directives by President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, the General Command of the Armed Forces issued an order to send large medical aid shipments to South Sudan and Yemen. Egypt sent a military plane loaded with medical and humanitarian aid to Juba Airport in South Sudan, and two other similar planes to King Khalid Airport in Riyadh to transfer the aid shipments to Yemen. The move comes as part of Egypt's continued efforts to support friendly countries in the times of crises. Officials in South Sudan and Yemen thanked the Egyptian leadership and people for the Egyptian support. Sudan said on Thursday it had received initial approval for international mediation in Khartoum's and Cairo decade-long dispute with upstream Ethiopia over its controversial Blue Nile mega dam project. Sudan's chief negotiator Mustafa al-Zubair said that the proposal had been initially approved by the quartet. Last month, Khartoum suggested mediation by a quartet of the African Union, European Union, United Nations, and the United States, a proposal welcomed by Cairo but rejected by Addis Ababa. The dam has been a source of tension in Egypt and Sudan ever since Addis Ababa broke ground on it nearly a decade ago. Lebanon's Prime Minister-designate Saad al-Hariri stressed the urgent need to form a government to relaunch talks with the International Monetary Fund. He and President Michel Aoun had exchanged accusations on Wednesday over who was to blame for months of deadlock in drawing up a new government. Al-Hariri said he had met Aoun on Thursday to try to defuse the situation, calling for a cabinet to be formed as soon as possible. Al-Hariri said that he would meet Aoun again next Monday to present names of his new cabinet.
Right, welcome back. And the first topic, or our first topic during today's episode, would be the Palestinian cause, as we are very much waiting for the much anticipated elections that would be taking place on May 22nd. And all the Palestinian factions have been attending here in Cairo an important dialogue to accelerate and help solve all the sticking points or remaining points, the challenging, and review how to consolidate their position and their unity. All this took place here in Egypt. Before we start with our discussion, let's first have a look on the second round of the Palestinian dialogue that took place here in Cairo in participation with 15 Palestinian factions, plus, of course, the PLO and the Elections Committee. Let's watch.
Under the auspices of President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, the second round of the Palestinian National Dialogue has concluded in Cairo on Wednesday. After wrapping up their second round of national dialogue, the factions issued their final communique in Cairo as they agreed on solving national issues, holding legislative, presidential and national council elections, in addition to boosting national partnership to consolidate the national democratic path. The factions also stressed on the unity of Palestinian lands on legal and political basis and the necessity of upcoming election in Jerusalem, the West Bank and Gaza. The factions also signed a code of honor in which they asserted their keenness on carrying out elections with all its stages with transparency and integrity. The two-day dialogue discussed inter-Palestinian reconciliation and dangers facing the Palestinian cause and ways to enhance the national partnership to consolidate the national democratic path. It also tackled issues related to facilitating elections, which the participants agreed on holding during the dialogue's first round in February. They issued a final communique in which they hailed support by President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi to the Palestinians and extended their appreciation for Egyptian efforts to host the Palestinian International Dialogue in all its stages, in addition to closely following up the implementation of what had been agreed on. The participants also stressed the political and lawful unity of the Palestinian territories and the importance of holding the coming elections. The Central Palestinian Election Committee starts on Saturday, receiving candidacy applications for the legislative elections for 12 days that ends on Wednesday, the 31st of March.
Right, and to discuss the issue and the Palestinian factions meeting that took place here in Cairo and the preparations for the much anticipated May elections, we have with us over the phone Ambassador Gamal Bayoumi, former Assistant Foreign Minister. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, how are you?
Let me here take your reading to the Palestinian cause. Let me here see it from the perspective of a new U.S. administration taking the helm of another path, a two-state solution, returning back to the two-state solution, and we are not very much aware with the rest of their path. How do you view the Palestinian cause and the future, or let me say this upcoming stage of the Palestinian cause after the Biden administration taking office?
Of course, as you will know, I am from the generation who lived with this disaster since it was establishing Israel in 1948. Then I was very close when I was nominated as the head of Israel's department as the Foreign Office. And the best friends to Israel is telling them, without the two-state solution, there isn't any future for Israel. Imagine what is the future of Israel 20 years from now. 6, 7, 8 million Israelis living with the same number of Arabs, and of course the Arabs are going to be much more, with a border of 200 million enemies. Where is the future of a country like that? So I think even if it takes longer time and long time, we can wait 50 years, then Israel itself it will be diminishing. So Shimon Peres himself, he told us once in one of his lectures that his generation was grateful to Egypt when we established the peace process. Then now you have a generation who was born in Israel, who have seen Israel occupying Sinai up till the Suez Canal zone, and now they think that this is their land. And even they are now occupying the Golan Heights in Syria, and without any hesitation. Some of the international community is not aware about this. But the good thing about our case that when you go to the United Nations, more than 160 countries are voting with us. So we have time, and we have to be very patient. The most important thing is our internal front. the Palestinians themselves, not to be divided among Hamas and the PLO. We have to be very strong in the internal front. Then we can see. But there isn't any future for this country called Israel if they insist to occupy other people's land. And the good thing that Europe and the European Union is supporting our point of view. The American administration is hesitating from right to left. We are happy with the position of the Foreign Office, the State Department, and the Pentagon. Both of them are reading the files quite well. The problem is in the Congress and in the presidency, because both of them are abiding to the stress of the public opinion supporting Israeli point of view.
Yes.
So let us hope that the negotiation will go ahead, that we can convince the Israelis that this sort of policy would lead them to nothing. Without the two-state solution, there isn't any future for this country. And my only problem and my only interest is to keep the Palestinians unified around their right cause.
Right. Ambassador Bayoumi, when we hear speak about the Palestinian cause and we see Egypt accelerating with much of gathering the Palestinian factions all together in order to be able to consolidate their position, unite their position, particularly in this upcoming stage. Now, we have just seen under the auspices of President Sisi, Palestinian National Dialogue concludes. It was here on Tuesday and Wednesday, and an important outcome came out of these 2 days meetings. That all in preparation for the upcoming elections. How do you view the importance of the upcoming elections? How do you view Egypt's accelerating with this, or what is the reason behind Egypt's trying to push forward for such elections to go ahead?
We hope that this will be a good solution in the Palestinian question, in Libya and in Yemen also, because you cannot separate a country around some groups here or groups there. Elections will be, at the end, establishing a government, unified government for one country. Because the disease of many cases, like in Libya, like in Syria, in Yemen, in Africa in general, that some people do not think about the country, they think about the tribe. So, and each tribe is asking a foreign force to support it. This is very dangerous. Now, Egypt succeeded to bring all the Palestinian people and all those who are from Hamas or from PLO, and they sit as brothers and the citizens of one sole country, which is Palestine, and they agreed upon establishing and electing a new government. Then we shall be in a position to have one Palestinian vote. We shall have the unity of the Palestinian people back. And this is very important, because one thing the Israelis are telling us that they do not have a Palestinian leadership to sign a peace agreement with them. Let us start establishing a new leadership in the Palestinian camp and having one government representing the whole Palestinian people. Then I think we are in a much better negotiation position.
Right. If we return back to the Palestinian cause itself, and we have to agree that there is an importance, a certain importance of pushing forward the peace or the stalemate in the peace negotiations. When we speak about the Palestinian factions, definitely they have appreciated the role Egypt is playing, but also why is it so important for the Palestinian factions to unite their stance at this very particular moment? Why?
Because if they are not united, nobody will be ready to sign an agreement with nobody. Because if you don't have a leadership representing the whole Palestinian people, nobody will be satisfied talking to them. And by the way, this is a problem with Israel because Israel is a highly divided country also. But at the end, they elect a government, and it is a government which is abide to some pressure from right or left or those very pessimistic people or optimistic people. But anyway, you have at the end one Israeli government. If we do not have one Palestinian government representing the whole Palestinian people, we are nowhere. And here comes the role of Egypt, because Egypt is a very acceptable face for everybody. We can give guarantees to all the Palestinian factions in order to come to reason, to come to the negotiation table, and come with one vote representing the whole Palestinian people.
Right. Let me here take our last point here, which I may ask of how important is it for the Palestinians themselves to realize that in order to have the two-state solution, the one that has an independent state with East Jerusalem, and I have to ask here about East Jerusalem issue in this upcoming stage and what's its position from the new U.S. administration. We have two important issues: how to facilitate, or the Central Palestinian Election Committee, and how it has to facilitate the process inside the Palestinian territories. What would be the position of the new U.S. administration towards East Jerusalem if there is a chance for returning to negotiation?
As a matter of fact, we have here 2 points. First, that when we ask the Palestinians to unify themselves, we are not asking all of them to take 100% the same position, but to have all the margins where we stand and where we are concerning the important points which will affect the future of the Palestinian state and the Palestinian question. Second, as of Jerusalem and East Jerusalem, it's not a Palestinian problem only. It is an Islamic problem.
Yes.
You have 1,500 million Muslims all over the world who are looking to Jerusalem as, of course, the second point which we are praying for.
Yes.
So, I here remind you that when Yasser Arafat was negotiating in Oslo, and somebody was pressuring him concerning Jerusalem, and he said, it's not my problem, it is the whole Islamic world problem. So I don't think that Israel can go for what they are seeking, to have one Jerusalem under the Israeli flag. Egypt here, of course, we have property there. We have Deir al-Sultan, the church which belongs to our Eastern church, and we are there strongly. We have Muslims, we have Christians who are interested in Jerusalem, and we have properties there. No way to solve this problem without giving East Jerusalem its position as an Islamic Copt and Arab city.
Right.
No way for a final solution for the Palestinian question or the Jerusalem problem. As of the United States, I don't think that if the Israelis come to reason, that the United States will be opposing a solution which is settled between the Arabs and the Israelis. I here recall the huge effort by President Sadat, the late President Sadat, when he make a settlement with the Israelis, and then you do not expect any position of the United States against what Egypt and Israel agreed upon. So I'm not concerned about the position of the United States at this point. If we come to reason, if we come to an agreement between Palestinians, Arabs, and Israel, then I think United States should bless any agreement in this concern.
Right. Ambassador Gamal Bayoumi, former assistant, former minister, we thank you so much for your input. Of course, remains to be seen what will happen during this upcoming stage. How will the Palestinians themselves prepare for their elections, unify their stance in order to be able to achieve what they aim for, and how Egypt, or as usual, Egypt will be helping and trying to accelerate with the process for the aspiration, or for fulfilling the aspiration of the Palestinian people. Now we move to another important file, which is the Libyan developments. And the Libyan developments is seeing much important developments. Before we start with our discussion, let's first have a quick look on this report and we'll come back.
Libya's first unity government in years was sworn in last Monday in the eastern city of Tobruk, charged with unifying the country after years of violence and division and overseeing the run-up to national elections. The government, which emerged through a United Nations dialogue process and was ratified last week in a frontline city, is seen as providing Libya's best hope in years for an end to a decade of chaos. Libya's new interim Prime Minister Abdelhamid Dibeiba pledged to unite divided Libya as he was sworn in on Monday, preparing to steer the war-torn country to December elections. The North African nation descended into conflict after Muammar al-Gaddafi was toppled in 2011. A United Nations supervised process is working to unite the country, building on an October ceasefire between rival administrations in the country's east and west. Dibeiba, selected during the talks in February alongside an interim three-member presidency council, took the oath of office in front of lawmakers in eastern city of Tobruk. More than 1,000 kilometers from the capital Tripoli in the west, Tobruk has been the seat of Libya's elected parliament since 2014. Dibeiba's swearing-in comes after Parliament last week approved his cabinet in a move hailed by key leaders and foreign powers as historic. The government pledged to preserve the unity, security and integrity of Libya, with Dibeiba insisting that his cabinet will be the government of all Libyans. Several ambassadors attended the ceremony alongside Parliament Speaker Aguila Saleh. The creation of a unity government caps 5 months of efforts by the United Nations since last year's truce between the country's main warring sides.
Right, welcome back. And Libya also has seen lots and lots of developments, particularly during the last period. But one positive issue was a sworn-in of the first unity government in years. And that this new government was sworn in on Monday before the new Prime Minister, Dibeiba, and it took place in Tobruk. Most of people see these elections as a turning point to the situation in Libya, where we are supposed to be seeing new developments taking place, where we are supposed to be seeing a government that will oversee the next national elections, and lots of challenges that should be met during this upcoming stage. Let me here take with us over the phone Engineer Hassan Shaaban, a political analyst. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for calling me.
Right, this is the first unity government in years. We've always seen the situation since the eruption of the revolution in Libya, or the uprising in Libya, and we have seen a chaotic situation there. So we are seeing today Libya's unity government taking the helm in front or before many challenges. First, let me see, how do you view the new Libyan government. What are the challenges that are emerging before this government?
Forming the new government actually is a step toward stability and security and development in Libya. It's been almost 10 years since Libya had one government that unites all of the whole of Libya. I think the biggest challenge that faces Libya for the time being is the disarmament of the mercenaries and the terrorist groups that actually were roaming here and there in Libya, especially in the south, where we have a majority of ISIS close to Sabha in an area called Obari. It is a big number, not less than maybe 15 or 18,000 of the troops of ISIS are there. I think this is a main challenge that the Libyan government will have to face, annihilating the ISIS troops in the south of Sabha. Also, there is a lot of African mercenaries actually that were infiltrated to Libya in the last few years, being paid by foreign governments that wanted the uprising in Libya to continue. But I think with the supervision of the United Nations and the international efforts to disarmament of mercenaries, that will be essential. The second thing is the pandemic, actually. All of this is happening, forming a new government and choosing a new prime minister that unifies Libya is happening while the pandemic is ongoing. So I think the new government will have to face seriously the pandemic and start a campaign to vaccinate the Libyan people and to show interest that they are capable of rendering services, medical services, to the people of Libya, in spite of the fact that, this is an early stage. The government just handled the responsibility, but they should have a very aggressive approach toward the pandemic and control it, actually. The third item is development, refurbishment of the oil and gas, refurbish the oil and gas installations and refineries and outlets of the crude oil in Benghazi and in Tobruk and all these areas, because definitely that requires a lot of maintenance that would keep Libya capable of selling its oil and feeding the budget, because mainly Libya depends solely on gas and oil.
Right. Here, Engineer Shaban, we are aware that in order to be able to, for the Libyans to control their oil and to be able to produce and regain the helm of controlling their oil fields, there have to be some security. And that also is depending on a unity between two forces, because for the first time we are seeing here Libyan's unity government taking office in smooth transition of power. In smooth transition of power, that means a lot. For the first time, there is no an Eastern and a Western governments, conflicting governments. So how do you view here this importance of a smooth transition of power before a country that needs and aspire for reconstruction, the reconstruction of their whole situation, politically, economically, strategically, and all this issue? Plus, Egypt, or let me take first your answer to this.
Well, the span of 10 years, definitely the Libyans have really realized that they have to reason and get together, because really the first victim for this uprising is the Libyans themselves.
Yes.
They've lost 10 years of really precious time that they could have utilized to develop the country. Libya is a very rich country, and it should actually be on the top of the list in developed countries. So definitely one of the main tasks that faces Libya is to get back all the, the armed forces in one large army. You're going to have one army that defends the Libyan soil. And second, I think it's up to the Libyans to decide whether they will maintain and keep foreign forces on their soil or not. But I think definitely it is not really an appreciated idea that some foreign forces could be on Libyan soil. So unifying the army is very important. The Central Bank of Libya should actually control the economical situation and cooperate with the Minister of Budget. The whole thing actually requires a lot of coordination, but I'm sure that Mr. Abdulhamid al-Dabaiba, the new Prime Minister, is very capable of handling the situation. He's a very logic person. I've known him for some time, and I think he's a very logic and a smart individual, and I think he will be able from now till the end or the 24th of December be able to make a difference.
Right. My last point here would be how the international community should be responding. Egypt, the US, European powers, they all hailed. But let me here take what should be the next step. How could all the countries at this very particular point be sincere, and let me put the word sincere, in their will for the return of Libya?
Well, Egypt, let's start with Egypt first. We have a very special relationship with Libya since 1970, since, Gaddafi's regime. But we never really interfered in Libyan affairs, and our relationship with Libya is based on respect and mutual interest, and we don't interfere in one another's affairs. But recently, Egypt have signed an agreement with the Libyan government to start to allow Egyptian labor to mobilize back to Libya and participate in the development and construction projects that the Libyan government will start, actually.
Right.
Second, the European community appreciates very much stability of Libya, because the European countries are suffering from illegal migration, actually. So the illegal migration is a headache for the European countries.
Indeed.
And I think having a stable government in Libya will control the shores of Libya and will prevent illegal seepage to Europe.
Yes, let me here take a final point, because I'm running out of time, and we've seen President Sisi the first to congratulate Libya's top officials on forming this new executive authority. But here, let me take, what do we expect? What should be the role of Egypt in this upcoming stage, since we've seen the role Egypt has been playing during the past period in order to find such an end result?
Egypt will be always there to assist technically, economically, in the new ambitious Libyan programs. So I think Egypt have already proposed to Libya to utilize all our expertise.
Yes.
That actually developed our development projects that we've been doing in the last 5 years, to the benefit of Libya. So Egypt is playing a major role because we are the sole or the main supplier of labor in Libya.
Right. Definitely remain to be seen what will happen in Libya during this upcoming stage. All our best wishes for Libya to find its security, stability in order to be able to preserve and protect its sovereignty. Engineer Hassan Shaban, a former political analyst, we thank you so much for being with us over the phone and for your input. I guess that brings us to the end of this episode. Next Saturday will be important developments in the Arab world. Until next Saturday, it's goodbye.